we meet a bee named Maya. And Maya, she had this relentless, beautiful rhythm to her life. I mean, she worked before the sun even came up, brushing the early morning dew right off her wings, and she worked long after the sun went down, navigating the darkening garden. Literally every single morning, before the very first flower even thought about opening its petals, Maya was already flying. It was just the steady, quiet drumbeat of pure dedication. Now, what you really need to know about Maya is that she wasn't the biggest bee in the hive. She wasn't the fastest, and she certainly wasn't chosen as some sort of leader. But her work ethic? Completely unmatched. She flew out to collect nectar from the absolute tallest flowers. You know, the ones way out far from the hive that all the other bees just wrote off as way too difficult. She patiently built her honeycomb just one small cell at a time. And she didn't do this to be noticed. She wasn't looking for applause. She did it for a quiet, honest purpose. And because of that, the honey she made was the absolute purest in the whole garden.
Now the other bees, they knew the quality of Maya's honey. The flowers knew it, the old gardener knew it, but there was one individual in the garden who didn't seem to know, or, well, just didn't care. Enter the antagonist of our story, a nameless fly. And honestly, this fly didn't even need a name because we all know this exact type of character, right? Every single day he sat on a leaf near the hive. He never collected nectar, he never built anything, he never helped a single soul. Look at this stark, frankly uncomfortable juxtaposition here. On one side we have Maya the creator. She is braving the wind, flying through the rain, building something sweet and incredibly valuable. And on the flip side, we have the fly, a pure spectator. He just sits on his leaf and criticizes. He'd ask anyone who'd listen, why does Maya fly so far? The flowers near the hive are perfectly fine. Or he'd whisper in that quiet, toxic voice that somehow always carries the furthest. Oh, she thinks she's better than everyone else. That's why she works alone. He was doing absolutely nothing, yet he had an opinion on absolutely everything she did.
Most of the other bees just ignored this fly. But Maya heard him. And this is really where the tragedy of the story begins. Slowly, without even fully realizing she was doing it, Maya began to explain herself. She fell right into the trap. She'd fly back to the hive early just to tell the other bees why she flew so far. She would literally stop her vital work mid-task to show the fly her methods, trying to justify her choices day after day to a creature who had never once actually tried to understand her. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive toll defending herself started to take. Maya became tired. But notice this. She wasn't tired from flying through the wind or carrying nectar in the rain. No, she was tired from explaining. To conserve energy for these totally useless debates, she started flying shorter distances. She started building smaller cells. She completely abandoned those tall, difficult flowers that required courage and sacrifice, and she just settled for the easy ones close to the hive. It's not that she stopped caring, but her energy was just entirely drained by defending her truth to someone who had zero interest in it.
I want you to really imagine this moment. One evening, the garden goes very quiet. The sun is setting, painting the sky in these deep oranges and purples. Maya is sitting completely alone at the edge of the hive. The physical and emotional exhaustion of the last few months is weighing so heavily on her. It felt like a sharp thorn she'd been desperately trying to ignore. And as she sat there in the fading light, a profound realization slowly washed over her. She asked herself, if I have to explain myself this much, am I doing something wrong? Or am I simply explaining myself to the wrong one?
That night, Maya made a decision. She didn't make a grand announcement. She didn't gather the hive together for some big speech. She didn't storm over to the fly's leaf to have the final word. She simply stopped. She cut off the supply of explanations entirely. The very next morning, the fly was right there on his leaf, just like always. "Where's Maya going?" he called out. "Why so early? Why so far?" Maya heard him perfectly clearly, but for the very first time, she didn't turn around. She just kept flying. The fly kept speaking the next day and the day after that. His words didn't stop, but something fundamental had changed. His words stopped landing. Because ultimately, a word can only truly hurt you if you stop your flight to catch it. Maya absolutely refused to catch them anymore. A few weeks later, the old gardener was walking through the garden, slow and quiet. He noticed the honeycomb was fuller and richer than he had ever seen it.
Those tall, difficult flowers at the far end of the garden, they were blooming wildly again. Then he looked over at the fly, still sitting on his leaf, still talking, still contributing absolutely nothing. The gardener didn't argue with the fly. He just bent down near this tiny wild flower growing silently from a crack in the stones. He looked at it, stood back up, and said quietly to the wind, "A flower does not explain itself to a weed."
Let's step out of the garden for a second. Let's talk about you, because as we established right at the beginning, this isn't actually a story about a bee. It's an explainer about your life. Right now, in your reality, you have a fly, someone or something that is demanding you justify your beautiful, difficult work. Who is it? So the crucial point is learning to identify the flies in our own lives. Maybe it's a deeply critical person at work who literally never brings solutions, only complaints. Maybe it's a family member who just constantly questions your life choices. It could be some anonymous voice on the internet. Or, and honestly, this is often the hardest one to face, maybe the fly is the voice inside your own head. Look at the characteristics. This fly doesn't build, it doesn't create, it doesn't help anyone, but it somehow has an opinion on everything you do.
If you've been stopping your flight to explain yourself to this fly, you really need to internalize the truth that Maya learned. You will never, ever explain enough to satisfy someone who fundamentally does not want to be satisfied. You cannot work hard enough to impress someone who has already made the decision not to be impressed. When you're dealing with a fly, the explanation is not the problem. The audience is the problem. And that brings us to our final question today. The garden is yours. The tall flowers are waiting. The pure honey is yours to make. But the flies, well, they will always be there, sitting on their leaves, shouting your criticisms into the wind. So, what are you going to do tomorrow morning? Are you going to stop your beautiful work to turn around and justify your existence to a weed? Will you keep explaining, or will you keep flying? Thank you so much for watching this explainer. Now get out there and keep flying.